Mhm.
And here's the challenge. The higher up you go in your career, the more prone you are to this, for lack of a better word, godlike concept. Hey, I got here,
Mm.
I
Mm.
know what I'm doing. I think there's a difference between being productive and promotable. By saying no to this, we're
Mhm.
probably saying yes to something else.
Mhm. Mhm.
We want to
Mm.
make sure that the yes we're committing to is the right yes.
It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
Patty Allarello, is the person that mentored me. She's written several books, just a spectacular leader. She is so versed and skilled at getting the most out of
Mhm.
people.
Mhm.
And here's the challenge. The higher up you go in your career, the more prone you are to this, for lack of a better word, godlike concept. Hey, I got here,
Mm.
I
Mm.
know what I'm doing. Um, Sometimes we need to be humbled, and Patty
Absolutely.
was the person that humbled me, at a stage in my life where I needed to be humbled.
Wow. Wow. That's heavy. That's heavy. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
That
That's
is.
awesome. Let's move on to the next point. How to say no at work without hurting your career. This is a good one. This
Oh
is a good
boy.
one. This is a good one because a lot of people fall into that trap of, I got to say yes to everything. Otherwise, they're going to look at me as incompetent or that I'm not good enough for the role and things of that nature. Rob, why are professionals so afraid to say no in the workplace?
Yeah. Well, Ralph, it's basic fear. No one wants to be viewed as the person of no. The fear of refusing a task. How will that damage my reputation of being a team player? Will
Hmm.
someone not come to me? And it goes back to as children. If we played a sport, baseball, basketball. By the way, I was not a good basketball player because I was the shortest kid on the team. But I finally got thrust into the game, and I was afraid. What was I afraid of? Failure.
Hmm.
And so at the end of the day, I think we have to learn how to manage our fears, our anxieties. Failure is okay. We're going to fail. We learn from the failure. We grow from the failure. But I think at the root, Ralph, people often are afraid to say no for the fear of what that will mean to them.
Hmm.
Will somebody pass them over for that next promotion
Hmm.
or next task? Will they get demoted?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. No, that's good.
How
That's
do you
good.
I got a question around there, Rob. So you have a person who, let's say that they have just always performed, right? And I think one of the things that I definitely want to kind of, bring out, because I think this is one of the things as I was in management and leadership, executive management, how do you continue to you have so many wins behind you,
Yeah.
right? How do you continue to pursue the wins ahead of you? And on one end, on one end you have a precedent that you've set,
Mhm.
right? How do you continue to maintain that thrust in the now with the framework of, okay, this one I just can't support. How do you how do you leverage your wins to balance the no, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm.
How can someone do that?
Yeah.
Because they're not every decision that your leader has brought to you, you've always been on
Yeah.
board with. I mean, how you navigate it?
Yeah. It's really a profound question, Terry. At the end of the day, I go back to the KPIs, the metrics that are materially important, the needle movers for our company, for the people we serve, the communities we're in. Um, at a high level, it's a strategic negotiation, quite candidly.
Mm.
It's about redirecting without resisting, to protect the
Mm.
space that we need for essentially what are our core responsibilities.
Mhm.
And I think when leaders see that we have the capability of thinking at the in a bigger context,
Mhm.
seeing the bigger picture, so to speak, um, they recognize that sometimes saying no
Mhm,
is the right thing. And I often say this, as long as we have situational awareness, by saying no to this, we're
mhm,
probably saying yes to something else.
mhm, mhm,
We want to
Mm.
make sure that the yes we're committing to is the right yes.
That's so good. So, Rob, let's
Yeah.
just dig into that just a little bit more because I think you touched on something very profound. You said that as a leader, you've had people who were direct reports to you, people who you may say, "Hey, I want to do this, I want to do that," and they actually say no.
Yep.
They're not saying no to say I'm being,
Yep.
disrespectful or defiant, but they're saying, "Rob, I would recommend that we probably focus on this."
Yeah.
Tell the people why that's such a critical
Yeah.
skill to have if you wanna be promotable.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ralph, this takes a little time. So anytime I come into a new organization, um, people are getting to know one another. And sometimes there's barriers that have to be broken down. So, for example, in the last two organizations I was a part of, I had to break down barriers from prior leaders who had more of a command and control style of leadership.
Mhm.
And by the way, I had that style of leadership when I first started, and it was beaten out of me, not literally but figuratively. And here's how the conversation went.
Mhm.
I had someone below me who had retired from the military, and of course, I just thought, well, that's there's nothing there's no more profound example of uh, command and control style leadership than someone in the military.
Mhm.
So I told him, I want you to do this. I want it to have it done. I want you to do it this way, and I want it done by this date. Do you have any questions? And
Mhm.
his response, it was funny. I wasn't. I didn't find it humorous at the time. I do now. He said, "Yeah, I have one question. Why are you asking me if I have a question? If you've told me what to do, how to do it, and when to have it done by."
Mm. Mm.
And I thought he was
Wow.
kind of being, you know, a jerk.
Mhm.
And he pulled me aside. He said, "Look, Rob, I'm older than you. This is my first civilian job after retiring from the military with a storied career.
Mhm.
I see leadership in you. And this might seem unorthodox, but I'm going to give you feedback. That's where I learned feedback is a gift. What we do with it, completely up to us. But I try to do everything I can with feedback because someone is investing in me and
Mm.
they are wanting me to be the best I can be. So,
Yeah.
to that end,
Mhm.
I changed my leadership style the very next day.
Wow.
And so to back to your question, I try to create a culture of psychological safety where people check their egos and their titles at the door, and we are all equals there to solve a specific problem, drive a specific outcome,
Mm.
but we're there together.
Mm.
But it takes a little time for people to believe you are what you say you are.
Yeah.
Because if they have been in an environment where they had a command and control style leader and they were not interested in creating and fostering an environment where psychological safety is the foundation, where people can speak their mind, tell
Mhm.
you, Rob, I don't agree, and here's why.
Mhm.
Rob, I think you're missing a key element. Let me open your eyes to it.
Mm.
I'm I walk in, and we've heard these cliches before, Ralph, Terry,
Mhm.
but they're so true. I really sincerely try to move into a room where I am literally the dumbest person in the room. I surround myself with people that are smarter than I am, more knowledgeable, more experienced. Why? Because I want to learn from them and I want to grow and
Mhm.
I want them to push me in the same way I'm going to push them. That's
Mhm.
how you build trust.
Mhm.
If you don't have trust with your team, you are not going to execute. Going back to the football analogy, uh, Tom Brady is not going to hand off to a running back that fumbles the ball every time he hands it off. He's
That's true.
not going to throw to Rob Gronkowski if he can't catch. By the way, why did he throw to Rob Gronkowski all the time? Because he caught the ball and he could advance the ball. And
Mm.
that's how we win in life, advancing the ball.
That's good.
Mm.
Man, that's good. That's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
good.
Rob, I wrote down a couple things, man, that are just actually 3 things. I believe this is a whole topic in and of itself. Redirecting without resisting. That is profound.
Yeah.
That is
Terry,
that
we call that the Jedi.
that
Right,
is
so
the
so Rob
Jedi.
Rob,
Yes.
we talk about EQ as like almost a Jedi type,
Ugh.
power, right? And
It
that is a
is.
Jedi move.
It
Oh my
is.
So
god.
It
let me
is.
share something with you guys here. So yesterday, just yesterday, one of my people was extremely frustrated with his interaction with another executive leader at the company. And he's my barometer. He's the type of person that is chilled all the time. If he gets upset, you know you have a problem, right?
Mm,
And so he was asking me. He said, "Rob, I had to walk away. I was so frustrated." And I said, "Yeah." He says, I said, "That happens." And I said, "Let me share something with you. You have to use Jedi mind tricks." And he picked up because I knew he was a bit, so again, going back to learning the person, I knew he was a huge Star Wars fan.
Mhm.
mhm,
And I
Mhm.
said, "Think back to Obi-Wan Kenobi and what he taught. You have to learn the language of the person, how they operate, what motivates them, and speak in that language." And
mhm.
essentially, what you're doing is you're driving them to the outcome that you want to get, but they're the one doing the driving, and they don't
That's
even
it.
realize they're doing the driving
That's
until
it.
all of a sudden they realize, "Oh my goodness, he used Jedi mind tricks on me." So
That's
thanks for the reference to the Jedi, Ralph.
Yes. Yes,
oh,
that's
man,
awesome. I love that.
that is spot on.
Learn the language. Yes.
That is
No,
spot
I
on.
mean, this stuff is, feedback is investment.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's killer. Yeah, yeah, that is killing. That is killing.
That is Go ahead, Ralph.
Now just what I'm getting out of this is this, that mature focus, right? Your ability to be able to redirect, right, without, refusing and being able to ask the right questions and lead people, it builds credibility. Right? That builds credibility that plays to your favor when you wanna be promoted later. Because again, Rob, you've been there, right? You've had to promote people, some of the things that come to mind when you're looking at, is this person ready? Right? Are they mature? Right? Can they focus or do they get distracted all over the place? Things of that nature. So that is fantastic. Any other thoughts on that, Rob?
Well, so you mentioned promotable. I think there's a difference between being productive and promotable.
Mhm.
For example, we have what I call steady Freddies on our team. These are people that are not interested in climbing the corporate ladder, but they're highly productive people and they're very valuable. As a leader, you have to determine who your steady Freddies are, who are the ones that are emerging that have the potential to grow. And then again, having the potential to grow and being able to grow, 2 different things as well.
Mhm.
There's lots of people with potential. They just never extract we can never extract the potential out of them. When I think of what is a what are the characteristics of a promotable leader, I think about how their productivity produces a specific positioning. Those people tend to focus on leveraging their work, which prepares them today to solve the problems of the day, but prepares us for tomorrow. And that's how they position themselves to bring more value.
That's so good. Whew, that's so good. That's so good. All
Yeah,
right.
it brings a thought for me, man. I've worked with people and I've seen folks who were great, you know,
Yeah.
at doing what they do, and they were put in a leadership or managerial role, and they struggled the
Oh,
entire time because they weren't willing to let go of whatever that thing was that made them who they were, right? I mean,
Gosh.
we all know this. What got you there? We've heard it before. What
Yeah.
got you there won't keep you there. It's just
Yeah.
that's right.
it's as simple
You
as that.
Terry, it harkens me back to something Ralph said about being a desktop support engineer. I started my career there too. And my job was to, I'm going to date myself here, but it's okay. I think everybody knows that I have the stars, the bars, and the scars over 30 years. So
Nice.
I was responsible for building Windows 2000 laptops.
Mm,
So
Wow.
everybody had Windows 2000 on their laptop. And I had this system of Historically, you'd take them out of the box and you'd go through all the prompts, and it was laborious. It would take you a couple hours per machine. Well, if
Mhm.
you had a team of 20, 30, 40, multiply the time out, that's weeks, right? So
Mhm.
I learned the art of scripting at a young stage in my career, and I had this process down, and it was scripted, and it wasn't documented. It was all up in my head. And then all of a sudden, uh, someone did what we tend to do in technology: promote the most knowledgeable, skilled worker into a leadership role, and they'll just figure it out.
Exactly.
And that's where my command and control style came in. And like you just said, Terry, I had to do it all myself. No one could do it the way I wanted it done, and therefore I hovered over people and I
Mhm.
corrected every step because I sought perfection. And I realized it's not a sustainable model. And it wasn't until someone had the courage and commitment to me to grab me and figuratively shake me. Literally, they grabbed me by the arms and they said, "Rob, I want to challenge your thought process." Now, I had to be receptive. I had to open my heart, my mind, and my soul and humble myself to realize that while I might have been the best engineer that ever graced that company, as a leader, I had a big gap. I had to
Mhm.
change my thought because a leader is able to get the most out of their people and make sure that they're put in positions to be successful. And it's going back to that weight room analogy. When you see someone and let's just say for the first time they're going to try to press 300 pounds
Mhm.
and they don't think they can do it, but you as the trainer know they can. So you're there and you're spotting them and they're struggling. And you can see the right hand is their dominant arm. So it goes up and the weights are tilting. As a trainer, you know exactly how to push them, how to motivate them, what to say, what not to say, when to, grab the bar, when to give them just a
Mhm.
little nudge.
Get put
That's
the
leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you put the little finger on there, you're really not doing anything, but it's like you're lifting it up.
Exactly.
and
You're
and you,
you're
they're like, yeah, all you have is a finger.
You're spot on, right? And but that finger was all they needed to get them to get that. And if once they achieve that once,
Mhm. Mhm.
they're going to do it again.
Mhm.
And then you know what they're going to come back and say?
Mhm.
Yeah, Terry, it's time for us to go up to let's get to 315 next.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know what's so powerful about that analogy is the fact that to Rob, to your point, the ability was already there. Terry, to
Yes.
your point, the
Yeah.
finger just got them to believe they could do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
the
Yes.
most powerful thing about what we do as leaders is we see that potential. We see that ability in there. We got to help them believe that they can do it.
Uh, just to show how our professional lives and our personal lives are integrated. I have an 11-year-old son and he plays baseball. And he's been appointed as one of two team captains for a 13 and under team. So he's 2 years younger than the rest of the kids on the team, but his coach sees leadership in him. But he's really struggling right now. So he's making lots of errors. He's getting in his own way. That happens in life. We get in our own way. We're our own worst enemy. And so that's manifesting itself into bad behaviors. So he cried last weekend. The coach gave him the old uh, uh, line from the movie years ago. There's no crying in baseball. And then he threw his helmet and he was benched, as he should have been, right? And so I had this conversation with him about leadership, and I brought him back to um, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I asked him, "Who's the captain of the Dodgers?" He says, "It's Shohei Ohtani." I said, "I want you to think about something. What Because my son was really frustrated that one of the members of his team happens to be a little girl, got her first hit, scored a run, stole a base, and he was embarrassed that a girl performed better than he did. And I said, well, that's life. I said, as a captain, what I want you to see is you need to be the first kid out of the dugout to congratulate her, pat her
Mhm.
on the back and say, you did a great job. You scored a run. You got on base. You did all the things we need to do to be successful, to move the needle, as Ralph says. In the same way, when she strikes out, you're the first out of the dugout to pat her on the back and say, it's okay, Lily. You get him next time.
Mhm.
Now When Lily is getting in her own way and you see it, you're the first one out of the dugout to kick her in the butt
Mhm.
and say, Lily, you've got it in you. We need you to get your head in the game.
Mhm.
And as you could see, he was processing. Ralph,
Mhm.
I've led people at over 30 years. The hardest thing to do is get your kid to listen to you. So the fact that I got an 11-year-old to listen to me,
Yeah.
that was success. And it manifested itself the very next week in practice.
Yes.
So
Oh,
Tuesday
nice.
night,
Yes.
my wife said, Rob, he listened.
Mm.
You should
Right.
see him. He's like a different kid. Go ahead,
Mm.
Terry. You had a
No,
comment.
no, no, no. That's a great story that leads into what I was going to say. So I was speaking with one of my clients this morning, and he was sharing with me about. He was like, Terry, I got a little homework for you. I'm like, okay, what is that? He was like, when is the next marathon in Houston? I'm like, bro, I got a story for you. So I'm not gonna tell the story now. But at the end of our conversation, I was like, hey, I'll do that research with you and I'll run it with you. And I shared with him because I'd gone through the experience before. And I think this kind of caps your story along with what Ralph was stating. I said, there are only two other things in my life that compare or that are like, this is just under these two other things, right? When I ran that half marathon, it was getting married and having children.
Oh my
I
goodness.
the sense of self accomplishment
Mhm.
and um I think that the term I stated to him was the level of um, awareness and accolade of self, what
Yeah.
self could do, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was a self-awareness. I don't know how many
Yeah.
times in life do we really feel proud of ourselves, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
when
Mhm.
you accomplish something and you overcome something that you didn't know you could
Yeah.
do, or it was a level of awareness, and it sounded like to me your son had that
Yeah.
level of awareness and
Yeah.
wherewithal to say, "Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
I went to another plateau at this moment in my life."
Yeah.
And that is one of the most rewarding things, not from
Yeah.
a self of glory, but it is a humbling to realize I didn't think I could, but
Yep.
I'm somewhere I didn't
It
imagine I could be.
I I'll share another story. I beg your indulgence. Life's about stories,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Yes. We love
And
it.
so, I in my intro, I told you I didn't expect to be in technology. I was there by accident. I was gonna graduate high school, and I was gonna go to college to become a Spanish teacher because I love teaching people.
Mm.
And Spanish is I learned Spanish from baseball, and, so it but I here's the challenge. I like nice stuff, and teachers don't necessarily make a lot of money.
Hey, you gotta
And
balance
so
it.
I remember here I was, I sat in the kitchen with my father and my mother, and I said to my father, "Dad, I'm not gonna go to college." And he said, "Really?" I said, "Really?" He said, "What are you gonna do with your life? What are you gonna do with yourself?" I said, "I'm gonna go and work in technology." He says, "Really?" He says, "What do you know about technology?" I said, "Not a damn thing, but I'm gonna learn it. I know people." And he says, "Rob, for goodness sakes, you're you're not even 20 years old. You don't know people." And he wasn't wrong, okay? But I was so defiant, Terry. So I said to him, "Well, I'm gonna figure it out, Dad." And he said, "Rob, if you do not go to college, you will be the biggest disappointment in my life." Imagine your father saying that to you.
Mm.
Wow.
Ralph, I got up, I looked at him, my lip was quivering. I said, "Dad, I'm gonna prove you wrong." And
Mm.
I turned my back on my father and left his house. I
Wow.
grabbed the door, and in my head, I said, "What the hell are you doing? Just go to college." But here's the situational awareness that I had. My dad never went to college. My
Mm.
dad never graduated high school. He
Mm.
had to do it the old-fashioned way. His
Mhm.
school was
Yeah.
the school of hard knocks,
Hard
right? And
knocks.
Yes.
he
Yep.
just
Yes.
wanted better for his son.
Mhm.
So fast
Yes.
forward 30 years now. I'm boarding an airplane coming home to Houston from Rio.
Mhm.
My dad calls me. He said, "Rob, um, I just had dinner with your wife and your son." My son was a baby at the time. I said, "Well, thanks, Dad. I'm glad someone's having dinner with my family. I'm out of the country, right? And he said, "I want you to know how proud I am of you."
Mm.
And I said,
Mm.
"Wow." I mean, my eyes welled up, my voice cracked. I said, "Really?" He says, "I am." I said, "Dad, do you know what's so ironic about this?" He says, "I know." I said, "Do you remember the last thing you said to me 30 years ago when I got up from your kitchen table?" He says, "I do." He said, "You proved me wrong."
Wow.
And boy, that was so powerful. Now here's
Wow.
one other thing, and we talk about accolades, and um, this is a cool thing for me. This is where those accolades mean something because there's people behind us that got us to where we are. My
That's right.
dad was one of those forces.
Mhm.
I happen to have been blessed by being one of a select few people that was on the Wall Street Journal Tech Council. So I was part of that council, and a couple times a year they publish a full page ad with all of the names of the people, the leaders that are framing technology for the future. My
Mhm.
dad has one of those framed in his
Wow.
office at home.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
That's a
Wow.
great that's a great story, Rob. I will tell you, man, one of the things that brings to mind for me, and I tell folks this story who have that kind of because we all have some element of that in our childhood, right? And I remember there's a story, and Ralph, you'll appreciate this because I heard the story from Joel Osteen, and he said that he was talking about his dad, and his
Mhm.
dad was really trying to do something different, similar to you. And years later, of course, he's successful, whatever. And he was still thinking about, man, my dad did this and that. And he said, God spoke to his heart and said, look,
Yeah.
your dad did the best he could with
Yeah.
what he had.
Yeah.
Could you have done better?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And looking at it with that framework, right? Because you understand that no matter where I am and what I've done, at the end of the day, I'm standing on Willie George Baylor Sr.'s shoulders. That's
Yeah.
that's that there's no
Yeah.
doubt about
There's
that.
no way
I'm
you can get away
standing
from
on
that. Yeah.
Maddie Baylor's
Mhm.
shoulders, right? Because of
Mhm.
the platform that they created for
Yeah.
us to launch from, man. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that story. And
Me
I
too.
hope that our listeners, if you're in a similar situation like that, the just the amount of gratitude and grace in
Mhm.
that story both ways, right? There's amount of gratitude and grace both ways, Rob. So I really appreciate you sharing that story, man. And
Yeah.
there's always a segment that we're going to talk about this. So look,
Mhm.
God is great, and
Yeah.
man, he ushered in a tool called forgiveness.
Mm.
Bro, let's all of us, sisters, brothers, let's
Yeah.
let's all exercise that tool, man. It is
Yeah.
that one of the most valuable tools in humanity. So
Yeah.
let's exercise that.
I'd be remiss if I didn't comment on that, myself. There was a point in time as a man that I came to that same conclusion that Rob came to.
Yeah.
We tend to pattern our lives based on what we think we didn't have, when we were young, or based on who didn't support us. And, I was just telling my wife this story this morning, how when I graduated high school, my dad was like, "I'm not paying for you to go to college. You need to get a blue collar job."
Yeah.
Right? But it didn't hit me until later, same thing with Rob, that he was doing the best he knew how to do. And really, he was doing better than the generation before him. So he was trying to get
Yes.
me to have the same success. He wasn't trying to limit me. He was basically giving me advice based on what he knew and his
Yes.
experiences, right?
Yes.
And Rob, same thing. Years have gone by, and I've been able to achieve a few things, and he would just tell me all the time, how proud of me he is, right? And I had to learn, and this is the point that I just really want to make for all the listeners out there who are holding a judgment, or someone who has spoken something negative over you in the past. You don't know what that person was going through that made them say what they were said, right? And you have to give them grace, to Terry's point, and forgiveness, right? Because they were probably doing the best they could with what they had. Right, so I don't wanna miss that point, because that was big for me. It was big for me in my development as a man to say, "He wasn't trying to hold me back. He was only trying to help me based on what he knew." So, Rob, thank you for sharing that, man. That
Yeah.
that that
A
really
great
blessed me.
story. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Ralph, one thing you said that resonated with me there, and I learned this lesson as well along the way. And this is a really in your face comment, so just hang with me for the moment. So when someone speaks badly about us, you're exactly right. We have no sense for what's happening in their lives at that moment in time. But let's just say it doesn't matter what's happening necessarily. It's really not our business what
Mm,
people think of
Mm.
us at
mm.
the end of the day, right? The only thing we can control is how we respond to them, not how they
Yes.
react and what they do. That's on
Yes,
them.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, Terry and I have said that same thing on this podcast. It doesn't matter what happened to you or what somebody said about you. The only thing that matters is how you choose to respond,
Yes.
because that is
Yes.
100% in your power to control.
You bet.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Sovereignty Podcast. If today's conversation helped you grow in your leadership, influence, or your career, take a moment to visit leadershipsovereignty.com. There you'll find exclusive resources, free guides, and ways to stay connected to our community of leaders who are building purpose and success. Don't forget to rate, review, and share this episode with someone who's on the rise in their career. Until next time, lead boldly, lead with purpose, and continue to walk in sovereignty. Take care.